Caleb here, back again with more Red Knot. This time we're reading a book called Unholy Magic. Yes, I know, such a clever title. By, I'm gonna fail at this, Stacia Kane, maybe. Author of Unholy Ghosts. And there's a little blurb here. Expect the unexpected. Kane delivers dark, sexy, urban fantasy at its finest. I couldn't put it down. Karen Marie Moning, New York Times best-selling author. I'm not really sure what the cover's supposed to be. It looks nothing like Unholy Magic, that I would imagine it at least. It's just a chick with a tattoo on her arm, looking at me, but like half her face is cut off. And somebody put multicolored lights all over her, like green and purple lights. So, yeah, totally not unholy or anything. Just dumb cover. Generic cover. Back cover. Enemies don't need to be alive to be deadly. For Chess Putnam, finding herself near fatally poisoned by a con psychic. Because there are such things as real psychics. No, I'm not going to get into a debate about this, so let's just keep going. And then stopping a murderous ghost is just another day on the job. As an agent of the Church of Real Truth, are we serious? We couldn't come up with a good name. I could probably come up with something in 5 minutes. That sounds far more real and makes sense than Church of Real Truth. That's a slogan. It's a shitty slogan, but it's still a slogan. It's not the name of anything. Chess must expose those looking to profit from the world's unpleasant little poltergeist problem. Humans filing false claims of hauntings, all while staving off any undead who really are looking for a kill. But Chess has been extra busy these days coping with a new celebrity assignment while trying on her own time to help some desperate prostitutes. Someone's taking out the hookers of Downside in the most gruesome way, and Chess is sure the rumors that it's the work of a ghost are way off base. Okay, I was a little confused at the sentence structure and my cat is distracting me. But proving herself right means walking in the path of a maniac, not to mention standing between the two men in her life just as they, along with their ruthless employers, are moving closer to a catastrophic showdown. Someone is dealing in murder, sex, and the supernatural, and once again Chess finds herself right in the crossfire. Oh my god, it's going to be like a Twilight book, isn't it? Fuck! Mom, why do you have this? Because I certainly didn't pick this up. Damn it, Mom. Oh, Mom. Mom would read anything. It didn't matter how shit it was. She would read it. Look for these other spine-tingling, I'm sure they are, novels featuring Chess Putnam. Unholy Ghost, City of Ghosts. Better, but also generic. Where in the crap is chapter 1? Here we are. The penalty for summoning the dead back to Earth is death. If the summoned spirit does not kill its summoner, be assured the Church will. The Book of Truth, Laws, Article 3. Are we in an alternate world to our own, or is this a separate book from, like, the Bible? I don't even know if we're focused on the Bible or if it's some other religious text. I don't know. Ghosts were stronger underground. No witch willingly went below the surface of the earth, not without a church edict or a death wish. Chess had both to varying degrees, but that didn't make the doorway looming behind the skinny man holding the cup any more appealing. The doorway and the stairs. That's a fragment. Down into a basement. Down into the ground. Chess's skin crawled from more than just the squat-faced, weazened appearance of the man, more than the bizarre energy in the dirty shack. Something told her this was not going to end well, but then things rarely did. She could have busted the bastards simply for having a basement. What? The church decreed they were illegal, and the church was not to be disobeyed. What kind of church? What? What? That's crazy! You're not allowed to have a basement? What the fuck? Well, I guess my church is gonna get busted because we've had a basement for years. It floods constantly. But she needed more than that. A month of investigation demanded a more satisfactory resolution than that. So instead, she pasted what she hoped was a smile, with the right touch of nervousness on her face, and handed the skinny man the picture she'd brought, careful not to touch his grimy fingers. The picture was of Gary Anderson, a fellow debunker, but the skinny man didn't know that. At least, Chess hoped he didn't. My brother, she told him. It would have been better if she'd been able to squeeze out a tear, but the steps she'd taken didn't allow it. What the fuck is a sep? It was hard enough to feel emotions when she was high, let alone emotions intense enough to make her weep. Hell, that was one reason why she kept taking the fucking things, wasn't it? I don't like our antagonist. Yes, our antagonist. I don't like our protagonist. She's kind of an asshole. The skinny man focused his rummy eyes with effort on the photo, then nodded. Aye. Seein' a look-alike, he mumbled, scratching his bony chest through a hole in his ragged green sweater. I have no idea if I got that accent down right or not, so we're just going with that. He shoved the cup forward, narrowly avoided hitting her with it. You drink, aye? Thanks, but nay, little miss, you drink, or you ain't get down. Aye? All must drink. His chapped lips stretched and flaked in a gruesome semblance of a smile, like a fat worm crawling across his face, revealing broken graying teeth. All must drink, or the energy she ain't work. Shit. Who the fuck knew what was in that nasty cup? Even if the tea was harmless, which she doubted, the thing looked like it hadn't been washed since before Haunted Week. What the fuck is Haunted Week? You can't throw shit around without explaining what the fuck you're talking about. I am so confused. She could practically see germs crawling along the rim. The bonus on the job would be a couple of grand, she reminded herself, and snatched the cup from his dry, bony hand. His gaze locked on hers. She held it while she tilted the cup and poured the contents down her throat. Ooh. I'm like, do you really want to drink from something that's so nasty looking? For a second, the room spun around her, whirling on its side like an amusement park ride. The concoction tasted of bitter herbs and glue, of sweater and sewage. Ew! It was the most revolting thing she'd ever put in her mouth, and that was saying a lot. She held it down through sheer force of will, and was rewarded with another flaky smile. Something lurked behind that smile, but she didn't have time to analyze it. His hand was on her sleeve, urging her into the dark mouth of the stairway, and her feet clumped on the wooden slats as she made her way into the damp cave below. The others were already there, sitting in a circle beneath flaming torches, around a scared? I think I'm flaking here. It's supposed to be sacred, and I'm just stupid. A sacred wooden table. Across one end of it was wrapped in blue silk scarf, stained with blood or wine, or perhaps someone else's stomach had lost its battle with tea. Ew, disgusting. No time to think about it, even if she cared to. Instead, she made her way to the table, to the straight-back wooden chair someone had pushed out for her. Someone, she saw, was a 5-foot-tall human parody of indeterminate sex, wearing a belted garbage bag and white face paint. Heavy black rims surrounded its beady, pupilless eyes, and its voice was barely more than a dry whisper, like a knife cutting through cardboard. Sit ye down, little miss. It rasped, sit ye down, and the Lady Witch she'll be out. The Lady Witch was Madame Lupita, formerly known as Irene Lowe, and as soon as Chess had the evidence she needed, in the form of her own eyewitness testimony, and whatever the mini-recorder concealed in her bra picked up, Madame would have a date with the guillotine. What? What? Are we serious, or are we... What is with this fucked up society? What the shit? What the legit shit? I mean, look at the cover. Okay, anybody who can find the cover of this, because I currently don't have internet, so that's why I haven't been posting links and shit in the video itself. But look at this cover. She is a chick with tattoos. She's wearing basically what I wear every day. She's wearing a sleeveless top, well, spaghetti strap top, and jeans. But listen to what I've said thus far. Listen to what I've said. Like, what the crap? What the crap? Are we meaning, like, legit guillotine or metaphorically? 'Cause I could metaphorically mean, say, that person's got a death wish, but I don't really think they have a death wish. I just think it's a really stupid idea that could get them killed. The church did not take a forgiving stance on illegal ghost raising or seances. Even fake ones such as Lupita was rumored to run. But what was their stance on actual ones? Rumor, hell. What was about to happen here was obvious. Was even more so when a black painted door opened opposite Chess and an enormous woman thrust her bulk into the room. Thanks, douche. Put down fat people. Her face was white, her eyes black-ringed, a garish parody of church elder makeup. Any resemblance stopped there. Madame Lupita wore a shiny silver chaftan? I'm not sure. On which were painted various runes and magical symbols. Small pieces of iron hung from it, too small to offer any real protection. Chess supposed they were there for effect, as was the heavy iron and amber necklace around the woman's short fat throat, or the matching silver turban covering her head. Whatever they were for, Lupita's appearance was obviously what the other people around the table expected. Chess felt rather than heard their sigh of satisfaction, their belief that they'd done the right thing in coming here. For those who couldn't afford to pay a church laser to contact the spirits of their dead loved ones, amateur seances like these seemed the answer to the prayers they were prohibited from uttering. This church sounds like a douchebag. I mean, I could understand, like, look, this shit is dangerous, don't do it. And then maybe it's kind of expensive, or the church expects, a lot of people probably want to do it, so the church expects a donation. Like when you go to the cemetery, when it's decoration, there's usually a guy out there being like, hey, give us money. And you give him at least $1 or something, because that they take care of the church and they need money to take care of the cemetery. Too bad they were illegal, which was why Chess was here to begin with. Helping the Black Squad make a case against Lupita meant some extra cash for her. And too bad it was all fake. If Lupita and her ilk were truly powerful enough to raise ghosts, the church would have found them through the tests every child in the world underwent at the age of 14, would have trained them and hired them. Many of them had a glimmer of power, enough to send a shiver through the air and fool their clients, most of whom who had no idea what real power, real magic felt like. Chess did. Knew the feelings, loved the feelings, almost as much as the cool, smooth peace of her pills. If you really want a good hero, she should be trying to quit any form of drug use. Okay, your story is not more serious, it's not more dark, it's really uncomfortable. Just saying. Or the foggy bliss of dream smoke, whatever the fuck that is. Or the sparkly, fizzing sensation created by the occasional line of speed. Why is this character our protagonist? Why is she our protagonist if she's busy doing drugs? She knew them all, loved them all, because anything that distanced her from reality was a blessing in a world where blessing was against the law. What the fuck? What the fuck? What is with this world? This sounds like a shit world. Why would I want to exist here? Why would I even want to visit this world? This is shit. This is a shitty world. Of course, her drugs were illegal too, but that hadn't stopped her from doing them, hadn't stopped her dealer, Bump, or her whatever he was, Lex, from selling them. It just meant they all had to be a lot more careful. No shit, you're going to get in a lot of trouble, probably death, from the sound of things. Speaking of careful, Madame Laputa settled herself at the table, clapped her hands. Something clinked behind Chess. She didn't turn around, but she heard it. Soft wings beating the air. A psychopomp. What? Madame Laputa knew how to put on the show. I don't know what a psychopomp is. Explain stuff to me, book! All hold hands, she commanded in a deep, liquid voice. No messin'. I hold hands or they don't come. To Chess's left sat a rake-thin young man. His fingers were sweaty, his face wet with tears. As she stared at the picture on the table before him, Chess couldn't make out the image. To her right was the female half of a middle-aged couple in a cheap fake silk dress. Her hand shook against Chess's palm. Laputa reached across the table and grabbed the picture in front of the woman. What be this girl's name? Annabeth Whitman. Laputa bowed her head. The others did the same, including Chess, who used the opportunity to look around the room from under her lashes. The psychopomp settled on a perch behind Lupita's left shoulder. A crow, its black feathers gleaming in the firelight. To Chess's right, against the wall, row upon row of skulls grinned blankly at her. Most were small animals, cats and rats, and an occasional dog. To her left, a wall mural, spirits straining for the sky, their long arms and spidery fingers gruesome and sad. Sweat beaded on her forehead and trickled down the side of her face. Had it been that hot in here a few minutes before? No one else seemed to be sweating. Why was she? Of course, no one else was wearing a high-necked, long-sleeved sweater either. Despite the cold outside, Chess had no choice. Every inch of her arms and chest was decorated with the tattoos marking her as a church employee. Okay, you need agents. You need people to go in and infiltrate an illegal operation. Why tattoo the fuck out of them if that's what you're going to use them for? That's so easy to spot. All you have to do is, if you're worried about somebody, is, hey, you, take your sweater off. If you don't get to come in here. We don't care how fucking cold it is. We need to check out your body and make sure you're not a fucking church person. That sounds so stupid. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't anyone do that? I could imagine maybe somewhere on the body in a secret place. Like maybe your thigh or something. Maybe underneath your tongue. Or the roof of your mouth. Or inside your cheek. Somewhere that it's going to be really hard for anybody who isn't a church member or works for the church to figure you out. It should be really hard to do that. It shouldn't be tattoos down your fucking arms. Nobody would do this. Unless they were batshit crazy, insane, and thought that there was nothing on the face of the planet that could stop them at all. Like Tempest Tales or some bullshit. Church employee, magical symbols that focused her power, warned her, protected her. They tingled now, but whether it was from the heat or her nerves or the tremors in the atmosphere, Chess didn't know. It was nothing serious. She'd be right. She'd been right. Lupita didn't have anywhere near the kind of power required to raise a ghost. Good thing, too, as she hadn't even bothered to mark her guests with basic protective sigils or circle the floor with salt or anything else church employees learned in their first year of training. Or somebody could illegally figure out by talking to somebody who's a corrupt member. Chess wondered what they might see. Holograms, probably. Their technology had advanced to the point where it was difficult or impossible to tell the difference between a real ghost and the fake one. They have holograms. Holograms. But they live in a world where their society is pretty much dick, and you will like it even if you don't like dick. At least if you didn't have any natural abilities in that direction. And if Lupita brought in this kind of money on a regular basis, she could probably afford the top of the line. We don't know how much she's actually asking for, you haven't told us. Or it could be some of the old-fashioned tricks, the kind used by charlatans long before Haunted Week. What the fuck is Haunted Week? Dim lighting, the bizarre and disgusting tea that was probably mild hallucinogenic, the power of suggestion, mirrors and shimmering fabric, and the customer's own desperate need to believe would take care of the rest. There's an error in my book. Instead of just a period, that's a colon. At least it was safe. A real ghost was something to inspire nightmares. A real ghost outside of church control. Was it going to have a nice little chat with its mommy or beloved friend? A real ghost was going to have one thing on what remained of its mind, and one thing only, to kill. To steal the energy of everyone it came near. To use its life force to make itself stronger. A parasite that would grow fat on the blood of its victims. Not one of the people in that room had any fucking idea what it meant to face a real ghost. Lucky for them, they weren't going to find out either. As soon as Lupita got her little show on the road, they could shut her down, and the closest they get to a ghost was that hideous mural. Orange light flashed off of silver. Chess looked up along with everyone else, and her already nervous heartbeat kicked into high gear. Madame Lupita held a knife high over her own exposed forearm. Blood magic. Oh, that was not good. Blood magic with no circle, no words of protection. Lupita might be powerless, but this was... The knife descended. Lupita's blood spilled out over her tattoos. So like Chess's, but illegal. Another crime to add to the growing list, as if Lupita needed anything more to damn her. Onto the silk tablecloth. What in the shit? So, wait. We can illegally forge these church tattoos, but she couldn't bother to get somebody from the church who was corruptible enough to explain how to make something look legit to even somebody who is from the church. Are you serious? Kadira Tom, Annabeth Whitman, intone Madame Lupita. Kadiam Tom. A drop of sweat landed on the table in front of Chess. Her breath rasped in her throat. Shit, she really felt sick, weak, exposed, like all her psychic shielding was failing, and her power fought to escape as Lupita pushed with her own weak power. As she leached from all of them, Chess felt it, like she was a battery being drained. And in that second, just as the temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees, she knew something was very, very wrong. No, Lupita didn't have the power to raise a ghost, but Chess did, and Lupita was pulling it from her. Somehow the woman was reaching into her, through her, sucking Chess' strength and focusing it on her spell. Fuck. Chess fought, threw as much energy as she could to her shields, but she felt like a child struggling to play a tug-of-war against a giant. She couldn't think. Her energy was draining away, and she couldn't hold on to it. Her stomach rolled, her eyelids fluttered. The crow flapped its wings, danced on the perch for a minute, then took flight. It circled the room, faster and faster. Chess' skin crawled and stung. Her tattoo screamed a warning. Her mouth couldn't seem to form. Lupita's deep chant turned into a screech. Through a blurry haze, Chess saw the woman heave herself from her chair, her black ringed eyes widening in terror, staring at the pale haze taking shape in the corner. The haze of Annabeth Whitman. Chess gritted her teeth so hard she thought they might crack, and yanked her hand away from Annabeth's mother. The micro-recorder had an emergency button in case her fellow church employees weren't already on the way. She had to get out of here, had to have help. Whatever was wrong with her was too much, too bad, for her to hope to defeat the ghost. And if someone didn't do it soon, Annabeth would kill every person in the room. She found the button, pressed it, and kept pressing it as the pale column grew, as a head appeared. Long tendrils of white-horned arms, the shape solidified, growing more detailed with every beat of Chess's panic-stricken heart. She'd lost count on the number of ghosts she'd seen, but the fear never left, never lessened. A ghost, one like this, free of its underground prison, free from church safeguards and protocols, was a loaded gun, a sword in the hand of a lunatic. And Chess and everyone else in this flaming pit of hell were the first who'd feel the weapon's rage. The others didn't seem to understand that something was wrong. Miss Whitman was standing, holding her hands out in supplication. Annabeth, my baby, we missed you. We wanted to. Annabeth's features had formed now, translucent but perfect. She'd been a beautiful girl. Long pale hair hung low over her shoulders. The vague outline of her body beneath her gown was petite and sweetly curved. Her eyes widened. Chess held her breath for one heart-stopping, hopeful moment. They weren't always vicious. Not always. Only 99% of the time. There was a chance Annabeth would. No chance. Those innocent eyes narrowed, the perfect lips pulled back into a snarl. Chess barely had time to open her mouth before Annabeth dove for the bloody knife on the table. In her bag, Chess had graveyard dirt and herbs. She couldn't do a full ritual, didn't think she'd have the power to do one even if she had the equipment, but she could freeze Annabeth, stop her from harming anyone. Her fingers still worked. She tore at the tab of her zipper, yanked it open, keeping her eyes on Annabeth. She shoved her hand into the bag, past her pill box, compass and tissue, and cash and wipes, and all the other crap to find her supplies at the bottom. Figures, wouldn't you say? Madame Lupita screamed and tried to run, but her weight and flair for the dramatic caught her. She tripped over something. Chess assumed it was the heavy folds of her ridiculous robe, and fell with a thud. Sweat ran to Chess's eyes, acid bubbles in her stomach leapt into her throat. Shit. She was going to be sick. Her gut felt like somebody had shoved in a knife and twisted. This wasn't normal. Magic, especially not her own magic, shouldn't make her feel this way. She was... What was in that tea? What the fuck was in that tea? The assistant, the little one, cackled in the corner. Feeling awry, church witch. Feeling sick. I don't know why church witch is one word, but okay. Oh no, they knew who she was. Knew what she was. Had known when she walked in the door. Well, no shit, Sherlock. You're covered head to toe in a thick sweater. Gee, could it be those shitty tattoos that the church didn't think about when they decided to tattoo your whole fucking arms? Annabeth lunged for her mother. Chess threw a handful of assassfieta, graveyard dirt. Tried to put some power behind it as she forced words out of her gummy throat. Annabeth Whitman, I command you to be still. By the power of the earth that minds you, I command it. Annabeth faltered but kept moving. Not enough power. Shit. A loud bang. The clattering of footsteps on the stairs. Reinforcements. Oh, thank the technology that brought them here. They'd arrive. Chess spun away from Annabeth. The others would take care of her. Instead, Chess dove for the bizarre figure in the garbage bag, straining to focus. The handle of her knife felt cool. Wait, when did she pull a knife? She grabbed something I have trouble pronouncing and graveyard dirt. When did she grab a knife? Did I miss that? Like somebody had shoved the knife and twisted. Okay. That's just a metaphor. Well, apparently she has a knife now. The handle of her knife felt cool, solid in her hand, better than almost anything else. Up close, Chess realized it was a woman behind the makeup. She grabbed the tangle of hair on her head and the knife at her throat. What was in the tea? The woman giggled. The acidic silvery odor of speed sweat. How would you know the difference? Assaulted Chess's nose. Just what she needed. A fucking niphead lunatic holding her life in her filthy hand. What was in the fucking tea? You don't want to die right now. You ain't kill me, church witch. Ain't got it in you. Chess pushed the knife farther up, so it dug into the woman's throat and focused. She'd killed before. Our protagonist, ladies and gentlemen, is a bitch. She hadn't wanted to do it, and she hadn't liked doing it, but she had. And better yet, she knew people who did it without batting an eye. Knew people who'd done worse. Hell, if she went back far enough, she knew people who'd done worse to her. We all know what these worse things are than threatening to kill her, or trying to kill her, or actually killing her. It's just worse. People who made hate rise, boiling and putrid in her chest. She thought of them, let those memories wash over her and crystallize in her head, becoming something solid and hard. Behind her, all was chaos. The church employees shouted. The scent of banishing herbs rose thick and dry. Chess ignored it all and stared at the woman at the point of her knife. She stared, and she believed, deep down, that she would drive that knife up, and she let the woman see that belief. It worked. Tossro. The woman looked down. Where Tossro? Poison. Tossro was poison. Chess' head swam. Chessie, you okay? Down the right, another debunker. Her eyes were wide with concern, her hands still full of herbs. Tossro, they put Tassro in my drink. They knew me before I even got down the stairs. Is the kit in the van? I'll go with you. Dana reached for her, but Chess ducked away. She didn't want to be touched. Didn't think she could stand it. No, just take this one, okay? I've got to. She didn't bother to finish. It felt like she swallowed a razor blade, and she didn't have much time. Not to mention the tiny prick of uncertainty, of worry. The antidote shouldn't react with her pills, but better to be alone, just in case. You're not supposed to self-administer. I'm fine. Dana looked like she wanted to say more, but Chess didn't stick around to listen. She ran up the stairs, out the door, and let the icy wind dry the sweat on her forehead. The Morton case 3 months before had forever changed her position in the church. Not just her job itself. In addition to debunking, she now worked occasionally with the other departments, which was how she'd gotten to point in tonight's deadly party. But in the eyes of those she worked with, half of them looked at her like she was the great betrayer, and the other half seemed to think she was some sort of fucking genius for banishing Erishaduran, the dream thief, but only after he'd killed Randy Duncan, another debunker. That Randy had summoned the entity in the first place made a difference only to some. Okay, so we get a little backstory, which I guess happened in the book before this. I don't know. Chess didn't give a shit either way. The only thing she minded was that the anonymity she'd once prized had disappeared, and now she felt eyes on her everywhere she went, which sucked. Boo-hoo. Who knew what they might see if they paid attention? Church employees were not supposed to be addicts. How did you get attached to drugs in the first place? Why are you worrying about this now? Why didn't you wait until after this to get high? Knowing this was very important and something could go wrong. Her skeleton key unlocked the van's back door, and she yanked it open with a bit more force than necessary. Somewhere in the back was a first aid kit with a variety of antidotes along with the basic remedies like bandages and antibiotic ointment. She climbed in, leaving the door open so more cold wind could blast her. It wasn't just the air of the shack that had made her warm. Wasn't just the poison either. She had taken extra steps before entering the building, not knowing how long the ritual and resulting paperwork would take, and not wanting to be caught out of it. Took too long. What? Not wanting... What? How long the ritual and resulting paperwork would take, and not wanting to be caught out if it took too long. Okay, if it took too long. Dude, then... Take it like right before you start paperwork. I don't know, I still don't really know what it is, but dude, really, there are better ways to do this, even if you're doing something illegal. I'm not gonna talk about better criminals, because I don't want you to do shit, but there are better ways to do shit. Please don't actually go and do shit. That makes me a sad Caleb. And yes, I do have drug addicts in the family. Sad, but true. If she sat still and focused, she'd be able to feel the high. But there wasn't time, not unless she wanted it to be her last high she'd ever felt, which she didn't. The kit was hidden beneath the back bench seat. Chess dug it out and opened it. Fuck. Somewhere in the back of her mind she'd hoped the antidotes weren't kept in syringes anymore. So much for hope. The needle was cold, too. Great. Voices rode the wind into the van. She had no idea how far away the others were, but she preferred to have this done with before they returned. Nobody would think twice about it, not after Dan had told them what had happened. But that didn't make the thought of being found in the back of the van with a spike in her vein any more pleasant. Too close to the truth, perhaps. The undeniable fact that she was only a short jump away from that fucking needle turning into a vital part of her life. That only fear and willpower had kept her from it so far. Dude, you're a junkie. You're going to get worse. It's how addictions go. You get worse. That's why you stop now, you get help, and you don't touch that shit ever again. The rubber catheter was stiff, not wanting to be tied. Chess could relate. She didn't want to tie it. Fear lurched in her stomach and sat there like a lump of half-rotten downside meat. Why is that capitalized? She tied off, clenching her fist to pop a vein, slacking the crook of her arm, something she'd sworn to herself she'd never do. That she was doing it to save her life, doing it with church sanction. The way they'd been taught to do it didn't seem to count. Not when she'd seen this moment coming. Dreaded this moment almost every time she opened her pillbox. Then stop taking drugs. She shook her head. This was ridiculous. Everything was under control. She was under control. Now more than ever. She didn't owe anyone money. She had plenty of pills. She maintained a happy medium. Dude, that's not going to work. You can't be a safe drug addict. That is not how it works. Something will fuck up. One quick stab. That was all it would take. She could do that. It would be easy. She'd barely feel it, right? Not right. The freezing needle buried itself into her vein, and when she shoved the plunger down, the cold shot up her arm like a crack in ice. Tears stung the corners of her eyes, and she turned her face away while she yanked the catheter off, not wanting to watch the syringe bob in time with her pulse while she fumbled for the kit for a cotton ball. It only took a few seconds for the antidote to warm up. Another few to find the cotton and press it onto the place after she withdrew the needle, which must be really fucking difficult to do one-handed. It was over. She'd done it, and it hadn't been so bad. That was the scariest thing of all. Chapter 2. Never fear to call the church if you have any questions or stumble upon signs of magic that frighten you. The church's job is to protect humanity from such things. The Church and You, a pamphlet by Elder Bart. Madame Lupita's curses and screams as she was dragged into the church van still echoed in Chess's head when she walked into Trickster's bar a few hours later. It was early by downside time, not quite 1 o'clock. The Rolling Ghosts were playing. The Rolling Ghosts? The Rolling Ghosts. Fuck you. The Rolling Ghosts were playing, and she wanted to catch the tail end if she could. At least that would chase the memories and sounds away. And at least it was warm, in the sweaty, stifling way of bars. Her earlier sensations of being overheated had vanished by the time she finished giving her report at the church and headed back home to Downside. Even if it hadn't, the drafts from the stained glass window that made up one entire wall of her apartment and the lazy water heater that turned showers in winter into a gamble would have finished it. Thanks to the Dream Thief case, she got most of her drugs for free, not through her regular dealer, Bump, but through Lex, who worked for Bump's chief rival, Slowbag. Clever names, you guys, clever names. She didn't know what exactly Lex did for Slowbag. Not only had she never bothered to ask, she doubted he would tell her if she did. Their relationship, such as it was, worked a lot better when they kept their mouths busy elsewhere, but the fact remained that since she didn't pay for most of her drugs, she could have afforded to move. Could have, and probably should have. Somehow, despite having more money in theory, it didn't quite work out that way. Instead of more money, she ended up with more drugs. So you're buying more even though you're getting stuff for free? Something told her that was probably not healthy. Something else in her didn't give a shit. And the rest of her was realistic enough to know it didn't matter. It does matter, 'cause you're an addict. Lex was fun. She liked him, and he gave her what she wanted in more ways than one. But dependable he was not. Maybe she wouldn't have liked him as much if he had been, and she couldn't count on free drugs forever. Sooner or later, she'd need to supply herself again, and living cheap was the only way to keep up. Besides, Downside was her home, and there weren't many better places available. At least her building, a converted Catholic church. So there is Catholicism here. Is it different from the church in general? Like, what's the difference here? Nobody's really explained this world to us, except that it's a shit world and nobody wants to be here. Everything is like the death penalty. At least her building, a converted Catholic church, one of the few that hadn't been destroyed when Haunted Week ended 24 years before, was quiet. Even the hookers on the corner kept it down most of the time, which was more than could be said for most of the neighborhood. The bouncer stepped aside for her, admitting her into the dark red interior of the bar. The rolling ghost hadn't gone on yet. Instead, the Clash blared out of the speakers loud enough to turn the talking heads in the room into ghosts themselves, silent but trying to overcome it. She didn't want to think about ghosts. She held up a finger at the bartender and gripped the beer he handed her with fingers that were finally starting to lose their stiffness. Terrible stood in his usual spot near the back. This is somebody's name? Terrible is somebody's name. Okay. She headed for him, watching the red lights play off his shining black hair and eliminate the breathtaking ugliness of his profile. Aren't you elegant and cute? She didn't notice it anymore. Not really. Even now her eyes simply slid over it. He was terrible. That was all. He was her friend. Sort of. 'Cause I'm a bitch. But she knew it was what everyone else saw. The heavy jutting brow, the crooked nose that looked as though the bones were trying to break out through the skin, the scars, the jaw like the prow of a ship. They saw the thick mutton chop sideburns, the impenetrable darkness of his eyes, and backed away. A face like that was a walking advertisement that the man behind it didn't give a fuck. And a man who didn't give a fuck was a very scary man indeed, especially considering he made his living as Bump's chief enforcer. You already said especially. Don't do it twice in a row. Especially considering he made his living as Bump's chief enforcer, especially considering his size. Use a different word. Someone catching sight of him expected the shoulders to end before they did. Expected the chest to be less broad. They didn't, and they weren't. Chest watched him lurking back there for a few more seconds before he caught sight of her. His chin lifted in a greeting, but he made no other move. Something bothering him then, and no way to ask. They'd tried to have a deep conversation in a crowded bar once before. It hadn't ended well. Chest tried not to think about it. Just like we're not thinking about explaining shit that should be explained. Like actually giving, I don't know, quick, interesting background information that would be useful to know the characters better. Instead of just introducing somebody like, oh, their name is terrible. I'm not going to explain how they got that nickname, except that he looks fucking terrible. He looks like somebody punched him in the face a lot. Except I'm not going to actually say that. I'm just going to say he's ugly, and this is why he's ugly. Hey, Chess, he said. She got the words not so much from his voice, barely a rumbling murmur over Garage Land? What? What? Is that supposed to be a song? What is that? Is this another reference to something? What am I missing here? Explain your shit. As from watching his lips move. Figured you ain't coming after all, getting so late, you right? Yeah, right up. What kind of slang is this? The job went on longer than I expected, looking pale. You put an apostrophe there when you leave off a G. She shrugged and drank her beer. No point discussing it, not when they could barely hear each other. When are they going on? Few minutes, maybe. Not long. Hold on. From his pocket he produced a small black phone and flipped it open. The stark white glow of the screen invaded the darkness of the corner and highlighted his furrowed brow. Fuck. What's... He cut her off with a look, a quick jerk of the head to indicate she should follow. This she did, trying to stay in his wake as he cut back through the crowd to the front of the room, narrowly avoiding razoring her cheek on some guy's Liberty spikes and out the front doors. Desultory clumps of people huddled outside, braving the cold to get a free listen once the band started playing. They shuffled out of the way when Terrible headed for the side of the building. Chess followed. For a second the cold soothed her heated skin before it became too much as she shivered. She should have brought a jacket, but they were such pains in the ass to hold onto in a club. Or you could have just put your sweater back on. Got problems. He didn't look at her as he dialed the phone and lifted it to his ear. You know Red Berta, I know who she is. Red Berta handled all of Bump's girls, which meant she handled all of the downside prostitutes west of 43rd. Well, hey, whoever he'd call must have answered. When they find it. Shit, hang on, I'll be there. She knew before he snapped the phone shut that he wanted her to go with him. What she didn't know was why. What's going on? He stood for a moment with his eyes narrowed, sliding the phone back into his pocket without paying attention while he worked out whatever it was he needed to work out. Feel like riding with me? What's going on? Dead body. His other hand went into his pocket. The movement made his shoulders look even broader, but the threat of his size had never been less evident. One of Bump's girls, third one they find. Somebody's killing hookers? He shrugged, looking like a ghost doing the killing. Wouldn't ask otherwise. What? Just in the streets? Ain't you cold? Why'n't you come on, Chess? Warmer in the car, What kind of accent does this guy have? Is he supposed to be a foreigner? Why does he keep saying I? Just take a look. His head turned back toward the huddled crowd. Right, probably not a good idea to discuss this in public. So she nodded and followed him across the street, while the music kept playing inside the bar. Terrible's 69 BT Chevrolet straddled the curb 2 doors down. making the street light look like it was set up just to display it. New black paint gleamed in the orange glare. Chess was almost afraid to touch it, the way she would be afraid to approach any predator. The car seemed ready to leap forward on its fat black tires at any moment and start swallowing the road. Sitting on the leather seat was like sitting on a block of ice, but Chess didn't mention it. Terrible didn't seem in the mood for jokes. Instead, she waited for him to talk, knowing he'd get to it in his own time. They'd gone about 10 blocks through the abandoned streets west of Downside's red light district before he did. First hooker, he said, but the third body, dig. What kind of accent is this? It's like we wanted to create an accent for our own characters by combining bits and pieces of other style of dialogues. But you can't do that because it doesn't make sense. It gives mixed signals. You need to pick one. Establish one. Create your own. It's really not that hard. I mean, look at Pirates of Darkwater. That never felt out of place to me. Just have them talk like normal. There's nothing wrong with that, even in a fantasy story. Depending on how fantasy it is, mind you, but still. Bump ain't paid much attention before outside getting pissed. Dealer first, Slick Michigan, know him? She shook her head. The heater was starting to work. She could have relaxed if it weren't for her nerves. The last thing she wanted to do was get involved with a murderous ghost. Another murderous ghost, that is. She still hadn't fully recovered from the dream thief. Terrible kept talking while she fished out her pillbox and popped a couple of sips, washing them down with the beer she still held. Found him maybe 5 weeks ago, down by the docks. Nobody think much of it. You know how them docks get. And Slick weren't exactly the calm type. Figure he gets into a fight, plays with some boy got a quick knife hand. He was knifed? Aye, but then, he glanced at her. Second one came a couple weeks ago, guessin'. Little Tag. He a runner, ain't sell, ain't handle much, just carry from one place to another. Found him in an alley off Brewster. I didn't even know there were alleys off Brewster. She looked out the window. They'd gone south first, down to Mather. Now Terrible swung the big car left against the light. What was a hooker doing this far off the drag, this close to the end of Bump's territory? I ain't much good in them places either. Nobody even sure how long he was there. He body ain't pretty, if you dig. Hardly any left. He took a long pull on his own beer and set it back down between his thighs. Then took 2 cigarettes from his pocket and lit them. 2 cigarettes from his pocket? Okay. Chess took the one he offered her and leaned back in her seat, letting the smoke curl out of her mouth and up toward the roof. And now, girl, she said, you still haven't told me why you think it's a ghost. Ain't sure it's a ghost. Not me, not Bump. Got others thinking so, though. So you want me to come in and say it isn't? Be a help, but what if it is? He glanced at her as he pulled the car up by a burned out building. You think be a ghost Bump gonna call the church, ask them to take care of it? Or you think he come to you? Shit. Well, considering the church is crazy. His jacket practically swallowed her when she slipped it on. She shrugged it off and handed it back. Best not to look like a little girl. Probably best not to show up wearing his clothes either. Their casual friendship already sparked enough rumors, although those probably wouldn't have been as fierce if she hadn't lost her head and let half of Downside see her practically fucking him in a bar 3 months before. 'Cause that's what I do with my casual friends. I bring them into a bar somewhere and have sex with them. That's totally normal, right? She shrugged the memory off too, tried to focus on what was in front of her instead of what was behind. Fires in steel trash cans added a little heat to the air and cast eerie shadows against the blank, broken walls along the street. 45th was practically no man's land this far down, a street constantly under siege from slow bags men as they struggled to gain more territory. Here and there lights flickered in broken windows, indicating human inhabitants, but for the most part only shattered bottles and dirty needles called the street home. Chess glanced to her left across the street. A block away, Slow Bags building started. 10 or 11 blocks further north and a few east lived Lex. She shivered and tried to force herself not to cross her arms over her chest. If she was going to suffer the cold in order to look tough, she needed to do it right. The cold was abating a bit anyway, as those last 2 steps worked their way into her systems. Speaking of Lex, she needed to go see him in the morning. A tall woman with a mane of red hair so bright it glowed in the light strode away from the ragtag crowd and headed toward them. Her long legs were wrapped in woolly tights, almost the same color, finished with thick knee-high orange striped socks that peeped from the toes of her red high-heeled sandals. She wore no skirt, only a thick green sweater, and over her shoulders hung a sleek black fur coat. On anyone else, Chess would have thought it was a rat, but this was Red Bertha. It could have been sealskin from before Haunted Week. What? Explain to me what the fuck Haunted Week is! Or just about anything else. She looked terrifying, like a doll dressed by a homicidal child. Terrible, she said, and breathed the brashness of her tone. And beneath the brashness of her tone, Chess heard her fear, felt it tingle. Took you long enough. He didn't reply, just pushed his way through the ring of people and glanced back at Chess. She followed, her steps slowing against her will. A dead body was not what she'd had in mind when she went out for a drink. A dead body, in fact, was never what she had in mind for anything, and feeling so many eyes on her did not make it easier. Some watched with curiosity, some with hostility. Those she could ignore. It was the hope that drove a knife into her stomach and twisted it. A few girls in short skirts, their pale legs the ashy pinkish white that indicated the beginnings of hypothermia, huddled together and stared at her as if she could wave a magic wand and bring their friend back to life. Very few people realized she really wasn't that powerful. Usually it made her life easier. Tonight it didn't. Neither did the unmistakable evidence that at least a few of these girls were using some low-level sex magic. Not unusual for those in their profession, but not comfortable for Chess. Their energy licked over her skin, damp and insistent, molesting her, heating her blood against her will. The warmth was welcome, the reason for it was not. Neither were the memories it brought back. She never used sex magic. Terrible caught her eye. His was shadowed, both from absence of light and from something like sadness. Not good, then. She stilled herself and went to his side. Empty eye sockets stared at the sky, filled with blood. It was all Chess saw for a long minute, that dark space where life should be. Whoever had killed the girl hadn't just taken her eyes. He'd cut the flesh around them so bone peeped from the ragged edges, closed her own eyes, and set her feet more firmly on the cracked sidewalk. Not just because of the sight before her, that same evasive magic hung in the air around the girl, stronger than from any of the others. That didn't make sense. The girl was dead. Her spell should have died with her instead of insinuating itself further into Chess's own energy. Curling and spinning, tinged with a throbbing darkness Chess didn't understand. Instead of running hot, it felt cold, dank, and oppressive, like being shoved into a cave. She knelt by the girl's pale, motionless arm, hoping to steady her trembling leg. The girl's age was indeterminate, in the way of most prostitutes. She could have been 15 or 50. I'm sorry, I don't care how bad you look. I'm pretty sure I can tell a younger woman from an older one. The slack, ruined skin of her face told Chess nothing. Neither did her body. Beneath the blood, already freezing into a cracked coating, her limbs were slender, but it was rare in Downside to find people who managed to eat more than a few times a week. Almost everyone was thin, even painfully so. The only thing that stood out about the girl, save the obvious horrible fact of her death, was the thick sex energy wrapping itself around Chess, sliding up her arm when she touched the girl's ice-hard flesh. It couldn't be hers. It couldn't belong to her. It had to be an after-effect of her death. Part of the ritual, perhaps? Had they somehow used sex magic to kill her? The darkness hiding the energy, smooth and secret as an intimate chuckle, indicated that whatever it had meant, it was not a regular sex spell. "It be the cryin' man," someone said helpfully. "He tooken she eyes, so she ain't see him even in the city, aye. Left his mark on her, too," another voice piped in, younger and higher with fear. "On her, and on yon wall." Chess glanced up, finding the speaker's pointing fingers, and followed it to the symbol scratched into the wall. Not a rune, as she'd originally feared, a glyph of some kind, like a gang sign. A triangle decorated with, the Triforce! A triangle decorated with upside-down arrows and crosses. It looked more like a bizarre doodle than something to inspire fear, but the hairs on the back of her neck stood up just the same. Finding the symbol on the girl took a minute. Chess expected it would be carved into that too pale skin, but it wasn't. The mark covered her left breast, just below the plunging neckline of the girl's hot pink top. Not cut in. Burned. And burned before she died, because blisters had started to rise on the wound. Did anybody hear anything? She had to clear her throat to get the words out, to busy herself with snapping a couple of quick pictures of the mark to keep from seeing the entire body, as if she could filter away the girl's lost humanity by viewing it through the lens. "Cryin' man ain't let she scream," someone told her. "Nobody hear nothin'." Was anyone with her? Did it matter? Shit, how was she supposed to do this? Yes, debunkers sometimes investigated witchcraft-related crimes, but only as they related to cases like Madame Lupita's or ghost abuse. She wasn't a detective. How the fuck did Terrible or Bump expect her to look at this poor dead girl and know whether or not a ghost had done it? Of course, shit, she already knew one hadn't, at least not alone. Ghosts couldn't do magic. Unless the girl had been trying out an incredibly strong new spell, not likely, as the kind of power Chess felt wasn't the kind just anyone could project. Her murderer had definitely been human. Red Berta shoved someone forward, one of the hookers standing in the circle. The girl stumbled on her teetery shoes and righted herself, but not before Chess saw how high she was. "I had to get something," the girl mumbled, swaying in place. "You left Daisy alone to die." Berta fixed her with that glare that would have made a sober person quake. At almost 6 feet tall, Berta wasn't someone to mess with. She'd been a showgirl before Haunted Week. "What the fuck is Haunted Week? Explain this to me!" She'd been a showgirl before Haunted Week, and an attack from a razor-wielding ghost. Berta had survived, her looks had not. "Why does this matter now?" Chess stood and glanced at Terrible's impassive face, then back at the girl. "Did you see anything when you got back?" "Bettin' she saw lots of things," someone whispered in the back. "Flowers and puppies floating upward the sky. I saw the spook," the girl hugged herself. "Saw it disappear when I came back." "You saw the ghost?" "Aye." "What did it look like?" "Wearing a hat." Fear rippled through the crowd as everyone took a step back. "She seen the cryin' man wear a hat." Before Chess could reply, Berta spoke up. "Terrible." She nodded across the street. Chess followed the look with the slow sinking feeling of someone whose night had just gone from worse to deadly. Slowbag's men watched them from the alley. Chapter 3. Violence is the worst of humanity's foibles and the least necessary. The Church protects you from the need to perform such acts. There is no excuse for violent behavior in modern society. The Book of Truth, Laws, Article 347. So you can't get into a fight, I guess, without being instantly murdered by the Church. It wasn't a large crowd. 5, perhaps 6 men stood in the shadows, caught by the firelight. They didn't move when all faces turned toward them. Somehow that stillness was more threatening than sharpening machetes or playing with guns would have been, as if they knew beyond a doubt there would be no reliable defense against their attack. Then Terrible stepped forward, lifting the bottom of his bowling shirt so the diamond-patterned handle of his knife showed. Chess tried not to respond. On his opposite hip, he brushed still butt of a gun. On his opposite hip, the brushed steel butt of a gun reflected the watery moonlight. When had he started carrying a gun? Usually he didn't, at least not so obviously. Next to Chess, Berta reached up and extracted what looked like a machete from the crimson bird's nest of her hair. How in the frick did she keep one in her hair? Like what the crap? In an instant the mood changed from terrified sadness to hot rage. Excitement, butterfly knives opened in a blur of metal, zippers gave way to sharpened nail files, and pipes could be pulled from cheap nylon purses. How does a pipe fit in the... whatever. One of the girls flicked open an ivory-handled straight razor that had to be 100 years old. Nobody spoiled for a fight like a group of downside hookers around the corpse of one of their own. Slowbag's men didn't move. Fuck, what was she supposed to do here? Slowbag's men were Lex's men, and she doubted he'd take too kindly to her fighting with them, no matter how much he liked having her in his bed. On the other hand, Terrible was her friend, and the people around her they were his friends. Or his to protect, anyway. Not to mention the dead body turning to ice on the pavement at her feet. Chess, Terrible said, his lips barely moving. He held his head like he was sniffing the air for prey. Why don't you head back into yon alley, get yourself offen the streets. I have my knife. Nah, get on out, ain't your fight. Was it going to be a fight at all if she had anything to say about it? She held up her hand to pat him on the back or arm, something to show her thanks, but she dropped it before it reached him. It would only be a distraction. Instead, she pulled her phone out of her bag as she picked her way through the black alley. Things rustled and moved in the garbage piled along the battered walls. Rats probably, maybe cats or small dogs. She stepped carefully, hearing the sliding shriek of Terrible's knife being drawn as she opened the phone. The bright screen hurt her eyes and made her feel like a fucking target, standing there in a pool of light. It hurt her then what she'd done. Left the fight, picked up a phone. Target indeed. She didn't have much time. Darp. Run away, then call the cops, or the church, or whatever. Her fingers didn't shake as she scrolled down to Lex's code name. He was only one of 3 numbers she had programmed into the phone. Her ass hit something hard and sharp-edged when she crouched down, a metal box of some kind. Her mind automatically took note of it. It looked just like the sort of place to hide electronic equipment of the kind used to fake hauntings. But Lex picked up before she had time to really register it. Hey Tulip, what you up to this night? Call them off, Lex, she whispered, but as the words left her mouth, she knew she was too late. Someone shouted the fight was on. They crashed in the middle of the street, opposite the alley, giving her a perfect view of what was happening. Not just 5 or 6 of Slowbag's men. At least as many again poured onto the street from somewhere. How many had been waiting, and why? Did they just keep an eye on the street, or what? Call who off? Ain't know what you sayin'. Who talks like this? You right? Who talks like this? This slang is shit. No, I'm not fucking alright. Not fucking right. Your men, Lex Slowbag's men. They're here. A scream cut her off. Redbirda in full battle cry. The voice that used to belt out show tunes, striking fear into the hearts of anyone within a few miles. The machete sliced through the air and grabbed a piece of one of Slowbag's men. He howled and stumbled sideways. Terrible didn't miss a beat, grabbing the man's hair and slamming a heavy fist into his face. The man fell. Terrible turned to the next one. All around were the hookers, stabbing at the men with their small blades, wielding pipes like pros. Because hookers can do that. Sharp heels dug into soft leather shoes. They were holding their own, but they were outnumbered. Even as Chess watched, one of the girls went flying, her screech ending abruptly when her face hit the street. The fuck is that sound? Where you at? I'm on 45th, damn it, 45th and Barry. And there's a bunch of your guys here, and they've started a... What you doing there? Ain't nowhere near your place. I'm in the middle of a fight. Can you, give a shit later while I'm not at my home? Can we talk about this later? Call them off now. Metal scraped the pavement. A long slim knife skittered on the sidewalk across the mouth of the alley, the blade sticky and dark. One of the men fell. His blood steamed in the cold air. Shit. A fight? You safe, Tulip? More about the next 2 minutes, Lex. I'm not kidding here. There's a fight, and it's on 45th, and I'm stuck in the fucking middle of it. Please find out who it is and call them off. Another scream. Blood spurted from one of the hooker's arms. Chess couldn't tell which one she was, and in a moment the girl had disappeared. Another wounded fighter in a crowd full of them. Over it all, Terrible's face, oddly peaceful, totally absorbed. As she watched, he ducked down, catching a man mid-leap, and shoving him over his shoulder and onto the street. His knife flashed in his fist. Stay on, Knight. Give me a minute. Over the screams and shouts of the brawl, Sharon Lex speaking Cantonese. Okay, so this is Cantonese. Cantonese. Is that Chinese? I'm not sure, and I can't look it up. If I just did something incredibly stupid, I'm sorry, but I think that's a variation of Chinese, isn't it? Cantonese to someone, heard several different voices answer. Chess crouched lower in her not very good hiding place, her stare focused on the fight. Berta kept swinging her machete southpaw. What does that mean? What does that mean? Explain it to me! Chess expected to see heads start flying at any second. With her free hand she found her knife. Her palm was so sweaty it took her 3 tries to get a grip on it and pull it out, just in case. Tulip, you there? It took her a few seconds to find her voice. Yeah, I'm here. Hang on. I'll be over soon. You all hidden up? Stay out of sight. Them dudes, they ain't know you, Dick. Yeah, I get it. What you doing on 45th? Terrible asked me. Terrible's there all by himself. No, not by himself. There's a fucking army here, okay? And even if he was by himself, which he isn't, I wouldn't tell you. Thought you was fun. I'm not. Why he asked you go there for, anyhow? Ain't safe there, and you know that. There's a dead girl and one of Bump's girls. Hell, he was going to find out anyway, if any of his men made it back safely, which she guessed they would. A voice rose over the shrieks of the girls on the street, Cantonese ratcheting through the empty air, a call to retreat, she hoped. Oh, looks like somebody getting some payback, Lex said with satisfaction. The empty eye sockets of the dead girl flashed into Chess's mind. If he'd been standing in front of her, she'd have tried to slap him. What are you talking about? Ain't talking about nothing, just saying, is all. What's that? I gotta go. She snapped the phone shut as Terrible appeared at the end of the alley, his broad form blocking out what little light there was. Behind him she saw Slowbag's men becoming shadows again, disappearing into the spaces between the buildings. Come on out now, Chess." Her legs didn't want to support her as she stood. More bodies appeared. Red Bertha, a few of the other girls. Chess couldn't tell which ones. All were panting like they were being paid extra to get into it, but they were alive. Most of them, anyway. The hooker Chess had watched fly through the air did not give up. Neither did 4 of Slowbag's men. Red Bertha and her girls emptied the dead men's pockets with crisp efficiency, like murderous bank tellers. Chess dug into her bag and pulled out some tissues, which she used to dab at the deep swelling cut under Terrible's eye. She had to brace her free hand against his chest and stand on tiptoe to do it, putting her face only inches from his when he looked down at her. Their eyes met, and heat flooded her skin. Her heel slammed back into the sidewalk. "Sorry, maybe you should hear." She shoved the wad of tissues at him, felt him take them from her. Too bad he couldn't take away the confusion, and something like panic, making her stomach feel like someone was tickling it from the inside. Stupid sex magic. Almost forgot about how important that was, 'cause we needed to have some random fight scene. She cleared her throat. Another half-inch to the left, and you'd need a hospital. Orange light caught the wet spots on his shirt and eliminated a long rip in one sleeve. Beneath it the flesh was almost as raw as his knuckles. "Nah, I'm right." He took the tissues away, sniffled, and pressed them back against his face. "It'll scar." A deep rumble of laughter. "Guess another scar make a difference?" He had her there. "What you thinking on Daisy?" Oh. The dead girl still lay on the pavement. Whitish frost on her skin turned her into an eerie sculpture, like the statues of the original church leaders outside the government headquarters up North Side. Those were carved from white limestone, coated with diamond dust to make them gleam. The rime on Daisy's dead body created the same illusion, making her mutilated form beautiful. I don't know. If it was a ghost, I mean, it's really too soon for me to tell. It's so dark and..." Chess shivered. She'd have to tell him about the sex spell, but not now. Not when her blood still simmered a little too fast for comfort. Don't worry on it, Chess. Maybe you free tomorrow. Come back for another look. In the daylight, dig at the walls and all. Bring yon church stuff, them little machines and all you use. I thought you didn't think it was a ghost." His eyelids flickered, and he nodded toward the huddle of girls, counting their money and lighting the dead men's smokes. "They do. Bumpin' me? We ain't so sure. You ain't think it's fair chances, them showing up here this night, You think I pick you up tomorrow round midday, cool?" She didn't want to. It wasn't that she didn't want to help him. It was that Lex's words about payback wouldn't stop echoing in her head. If this was a gang thing, some sort of territory struggle, she did not need to be involved. Her life worked as much as it could, getting in between the people to whom she owed her loyalty, the one person to whom she owed loyalty, anyway. All Bump did was sell her pills and run the closest pipe room to her apartment. And the one with whom she swapped bodily fluids probably wasn't the best way to make sure it kept working. But there really was no good way to refuse. It wouldn't just look suspicious, it'd be wrong. She glanced again at Daisy's body, abandoned like a busted dream pipe on the cracked and pitted sidewalk. If it weren't for the church, that could have been her. Probably would have been her. Certainly it was what she'd grown up expecting. So she nodded. "They told me not to worry about coming in tomorrow. Not after what happened tonight. No new cases anyway." "They give you the day off? How bad your night go?" "Oh, it was nothing. I got poisoned a little bit. They had an antidote. No big deal." He cocked an eyebrow. "Don't look at me like that. I'm here, right? No problem. Where's the girl who saw the ghost?" He started to say something, then stopped himself. "Laria. Her name is Laria." Yeah, I'm gonna actually have to say Laria is a pretty name. Like, the only thing in here where I'm just like, yeah, that's actually kind of a nice name. "Yeah, her." Chess scanned the low crowd of women, picking out the fuzzy brown head. Laria stood near the back, a confused look on her face. Chess tried to catch the girl's eye, but she wasn't sure if it was possible for anyone to catch the girl's eye at this stage. She looked like she was ready to keel over backwards. I get her. Laria looked younger close up than Chess had thought, 16 perhaps, or 17 at the oldest. I thought you said it didn't matter what hookers looked like, 15 or 50, they're the same thing to you. So much for consistency, author. Her pale blue jacket had stains on the sleeves and a tear in one elbow. When she squeezed her arms tighter around her chest, her pinkish white skin poked through the hole like a turtle peeping from its shell. Laria, I'm Chess. Could you tell me what you saw earlier, the man who killed Daisy? Laria shook her head, her clouded brown eyes filled with tears. Ain't seen nothin'. You said earlier you saw. Laria shook her head again. Her hair moved with it, like a clump of dirty steel wool. Chess glanced at Terrible, not bothering to hide her irritation. She had sympathy, sure, but it was late and freezing cold, and she just wanted to go home, and Laria's reticence wasn't helping anyone. He gripped Laria's arm. You tell she, girl. Only way for us to catch 'em, Dig. I ain't nothin'. You the one left she alone, so you could go stab up, least you owe she some knowledge. Laria gasped. Terrible's fist was so tight around her arm that his thumb pressed the second knuckle of his middle finger. Terrible, you be hurtin' worse you don't talk up. Chess held out her hand. We can do this tomorrow, can't we? Come tomorrow she won't get any recall, he said. Gotta get what we can now. Laria's cheeks were wet. He had a hat on. All's I remember, he had a hat on. He big, small, you seen through him? Terrible's grip relaxed, his voice softened. Come on, Laria, you recall it, right? You just gotta think on it. He weren't big, ain't much bigger'n me. He were bending over her when I come close enough to see. He stood up, and he was... Laria swallowed once, then again. I seed through him. He was transparent, could see through him, Laria whispered. Septin, he looked up at me under the brim o' his hat, funny hat, with a point in the center and then flaps on the side. On the ears, all him clear, his clothes and all. Septin, she raised a hand to her face, patted trembling fingers beneath one eye. His eyes? The chill creeping up Chess's spine had nothing to do with the temperature in the air. Not his eyes, Laria said, and it came out like the low moan of a wounded animal. Hers? What? Laria started to cry. Him wearing she eyes. Well, that's Unholy Magic by Stacia Kane. It's a piece of bullshit. I'm not reading any more of this. It's generic, it's stupid, it doesn't explain anything, and it's highly unrealistic. I mean, you can create a world that has properties and elements that have nothing to do with our world, you know? And make it believable. But one of the ways you do that is you explain shit. What is the church? What is Haunted Week? Why is our main character a drug addict? Why should I care about this character who really doesn't give a fuck about anybody else unless she can either lay them or get more drugs? There's no attachment or interest I have here, except that the whole thing is ludicrous. When you write a story, especially when you're writing a story with fantasy things you made up, you have to explain what they are. And you have to explain, to the best of your ability, how they work in that universe. And basically, you have to have rules. And you have to explain those rules to your reader. And if you can't do that, then you have no business writing a book, and your reader isn't going to read your book. They're going to be as confused as I am. You cannot assume that the person reading your second book, your third book, whatever, how many books down the line, have read the very first book for an explanation of what is going on. You have to explain it in some form in every book. Because one of your books is going to be somebody's first. They're not always going to start with the first book. All she has to do is take a paragraph, a sentence, and explain what some of this stuff is. To make the character more reader-friendly, more protagonist-friendly, you have to actually sympathize with her. I don't sympathize with a person who is a drug addict. I don't sympathize with somebody who has sex willy-nilly. I don't sympathize with somebody who just sent somebody to their death and did not give more of a shit, with the exception of, oh, I can get more drugs now. Will this interfere with my high? And when is the Rolling Ghosts playing at the bar? Okay, let me see if I can explain this better. If you have a protagonist that has serious issues like drug addiction, they need to be in the process of fighting it. They need to show that they're trying to be a good person and make strong moral decisions against their vice. That's what the character in this book needs to do. She needs to be not a current drug addict, but a recovering drug addict. Addiction is bad. That's why there's such negative connotation with it. There's people who do drugs by association are bad people. They need help, but think about it. When you think of a drug addict, do you think of a good, happy person? No, you don't. You think they're the scum of the universe. And it doesn't matter how you write your character. If they're a practicing druggie, nobody is going to like your character. It doesn't make your story grittier or darker or more mature. It makes me not like your character. So if you give your character something very serious like that as a vice, you need to rein it in some fashion. It needs to be something they are trying to overcome, and you give them empowering moments when the temptation is so strong, and they man up, or woman up if you have a female character, and say, no, fuck these drugs, I got better things to do, like saving the world! That's what your character needs to do. That's what a hero does. In any kind of story, be it comic books, TV, movies, characters in a book. They should have flaws and problems, yes, but they should actively show me why they are worth being the main hero of your story. So, no, don't read this book. Don't read anything by this author. She doesn't explain jack all and doesn't know how to create a protagonist you can get behind. So, I'm Caleb, and this has been Red Knot. Thank you for listening. Bye!